Hi everyone, Christine Harrington here, the Savvy Sales Lady with Simon White and our special guest that you're going to really enjoy hearing from because she can help salespeople with their mindset and she's an athlete. So it all ties in together. And Simon, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce your special guest.
Excellent. Thanks, Christine. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Julianne. Julianne's been a client of mine, well, her organisation for the last couple of years, and Julianne on a one-to-one coaching basis for sort of the last 7 months or so. And what is unique about Julianne, not only does she work in sales, but she's also an accomplished athlete. And that's quite an interesting take in terms of mindset and such like, which is what we're going to talk about today.
You know, Julianne, I got to tell you, Simon has talked so much about you on our videos. You're the perfect client. And the reason why, and what really makes a salesperson a perfect client is that they're open to learning. They're open to trying different things. And they're so committed to the process. And that's what Simon said about you. So I'm going to start with the first question, but I got to put my glasses on because I can't see a thing. So given that you're an athlete, what I'd like for you to tell the audience is your athletic background and how you apply that mindset to your sales role, because Simon says that you're just as successful in sales as you are as an athlete. So how do you tie those two together?
Oh, thank you, Christine. That's a really nice introduction. Yes, so my background is actually in duathlon, which is a combination of running and biking and running again.
Oh.
And yes, quite interesting. Over the last few years, I've been developing running and turning into the duathlon races, and I was successful enough last year to go through all the competition qualifiers to reach GB team. So I represented GB at age group last year in Spain.
And so let me stop you there. For us in the United States, we don't know what GB means. So can you tell us what that means?
Oh, sorry. So Great Britain. So I won a place to represent Great Britain for my age at duathlon for the European Championships in Spain last year. And I've also qualified for the World Duathlon Championships, which should have been held in September, but they're going to be held next year. So I'm preparing really for that race. So my attitude as an athlete absolutely translates into my sales role, really. And I suppose the main areas for me have been about a positive attitude. As an athlete, when you're training and going into a race, you are visualizing that you're going to be successful, you're going to achieve, whether it's a time or a position in a race, and you focus on the end result about crossing that line. You never focus on the negative. And for me, from a sales perspective, I think when you're calling a prospect, you go in with a positive attitude. It impacts on your tone of voice. And I think that comes across in terms to the person that you're actually speaking to as well.
I love what you just said. Focus on the end. So you're focusing on the end when you're competing, and you're focusing on the end result when you're going through your sales process.
Yep. And also very much about preparation. So when you're going into a race, you fully prepare. Not just about the training, the physical training, but in the case of duathlon, you have to make sure all your equipment's available. Because you're running and then biking and then running again, a bit like triathlon where you're swimming and cycling and running, you've got various pieces of equipment and you have to order them in a particular way so you can jump off your bike and get straight into your running shoes. So there's a lot of preparation, and I think that's the same with sales really, because you are going into a contact, you're calling a prospect, so you're going to be researching them, looking up, finding who the contact is, researching on their websites, getting all that information together ready before you go in for that important final call.
Well, let me ask you this, and then Simon, I'm going to throw it back to you. So you're on the bike, your legs are burning, you are, you're huffing and puffing. How do you transform your mindset into pushing through? Because at the end of the day, on a sales day, when people are facing just rejection after rejection after rejection, they don't always make that final push. And that is a mindset cue. So how do you handle that from a mindset, Julianne?
I think it's about resilience, really. It comes back to the training and the positivity and picking yourself up again. So everyone always has a negative, and yet somehow there has to be an inner strength to pull yourself together again and move forward. And for me, it's a real inner determination, and you learn from the negatives, from the person that puts the phone down on you, to build yourself up and park it somewhere at the back of your head, and move forward, very much so.
Simon?
Yeah, I mean, you can see just in this brief conversation with Julianne here, just what a treat she is to coach and to work with. And what is great about Julianne is she's just so positive. I mean, the way we structure our sessions is we have a session normally on a Monday and another session on a Friday. So Monday's session is all about, what's going to be planned for the week, what's happening, what does a successful week look like, and then on Friday we reflect back on that week and look at where improvements can be made and that side of things. And it's such a treat. We had our session this morning, actually, and she goes, "Oh, I've got this going on, I've got that going on." It's all positive. Then on Friday, it's just brilliant. It's the energy you get from Julianne. Even on a Friday, as we're doing this Friday at 4 o'clock, we'll have a session. Even on a Friday at 4 o'clock, where so many salespeople have already given up for the week, they're already just playing around on their emails, trying to look busy before they finish for the day. Julianne's like, right, after this session, I'm going to do this, that, and it just doesn't stop. The energy she has. And then when we do finish on a Friday, I say, well, what are your plans for the weekend? And then she lists a whole load of athletic training that she's doing for the whole week as well. So there's an energy with Julianne which you don't get with that many people. And I think, again, that is a part of the mindset as well. So
Julianne, how do you create that within yourself, that energy? And, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my former life. I used to be a runner, a marathon runner, and I just remember hitting that wall and asking myself, having this conversation going back and forth in my head, you're not going to make it. Oh, yes, I am. No, you're not. You're not going to make it. Oh, yes, I am. And do you have that goes on in your head while you're competing or in your sales life?
I think there's always that little voice telling you what you don't want to hear, and it's somehow you've got to bat it down and move forward in a constructive way. What I would say is it comes back to parking it again in the back of your head, that negativity, and getting on with it. But I think you've got to go through with it and speak to that voice almost in your head before you can actually park it yourself. And on Saturday, I had a bad training session. Things didn't go right. I felt annoyed with myself. By Sunday, I got up and just thought, no, we move on again and move forward with my running. And it happens with the sales as well on a day-to-day basis. Somewhere at the back of that head, it's that drawing forward with your enthusiasm and your goals. And I think probably goals come into it as well.
Let me ask you this. How structured is your day in your training days and in your sales day? How structured is it?
Simon's taught me to be really structured with my day from a sales perspective, but I always start it with some kind of exercise. And recently, especially with lockdown, I've brought in body balance. I don't know if you've heard of that, or that it kind of relates to yoga, but it's much more slower for me in terms of exercise. Have you experienced body balance, Christine?
No,
No.
That's new to me. Body balance.
Yes.
Oh, body balance.
Body balance. So it
Okay.
is like a form of yoga, and I started doing it during the lockdown because we obviously couldn't get out of the house, and it's very much about balancing really and breathing, similar to yoga. But that's helped every morning. So when you're not going out to an office anymore and you're working from home, in some instances, some form of exercise like body balance or yoga really starts to bring some life into your day and to yourself, your breathing, your posture. And I found that's really, really helpful before I start much more of a very structured day, and that approach that Simon's taught me to do. And Simon's taught me about utilizing and dividing up the day. So the sales calls are very much about in specific hours of the day, in the morning and in the afternoon. And then the rest of the time structured around responding back to customers, doing my admin and paperwork, and before more exercise and fresh air in the evening for me.
Yeah, because you often go running and such, like at lunchtime as well, don't you? So you don't stop. So many people just have that kind of their sandwich at their desk and be like, oh no, I'm off for a run now. And that's again, it's just constant for you, isn't it?
I think everyone needs that proper break at lunchtime. That's something we all probably can easily go without. It's easy to sit in front of a laptop hunched over, and to get out, to stretch, to improve your posture with a walk and some fresh air outside, and then come back in. It sets you moving forward for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah.
You are inspiring me, Julianne. I gotta tell you. So let me ask you this. What does your typical selling day look like?
So in the morning, I will start with my preparation. So working out what my companies are that I'm going to be contacting. And then I'll zone out an hour to start making the calls to those companies and recording all those conversations as I go. And then after that, I follow through with the customers from normally a targeted date that I've got worked out in my schedule. And then I will break and then repeat a similar structure in the afternoon, but often including more of the admin in the afternoon. What I'm keen to do is to make sure that I don't ring customers at a time that's not suitable. So I really try and target that between the 10 and 12 o'clock and maybe the 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then that back end of the day, if I've got face-to-face meetings set up, then I'll aim to schedule those between 3 and 4 o'clock. And then admin 4 till 5 o'clock. So it is fairly structured, and it works.
You know, I'm really happy to hear that. And salespeople, here is someone that structures her day and it works, and she's successful because of this. In the US, Julie, I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but salespeople here really, really fight structuring their day. They want to be flexible, and they just want to, and what happens is they end up making sales calls on the fly. There's no preparation or thought. They just pick up the phone and make a follow-up call. And I'm always talking structure, because that is really the most productive. It is not to let your day to get away from you, but to be able to make the most of every minute of your day. So what tips can you give salespeople on structuring their day? Now, let me back up here. I'm assuming because you're an athlete, that wasn't hard for you. Is that correct?
No, because it is about following a methodology, preparing and following that plan. all the way through. So from a sales perspective, I think the main tip I'd give anyone is to zone out in their diary the hours that you're allocating for different aspects of your work, and that's key. And turning off the email as well, because email's such a disruption. It's so easy to flick back on that email when you know you've got your calls to make, because email's interesting and you look forward to opening it, and it's a lot more interesting than making a call. So it's a diversion. So no, email off, structured hour by hour in that diary, and stick to it as well.
Now, do you cold call too?
Yes, I do. I love cold calling.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. That's my favorite subject.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I think it's the thrill of making contact and getting through and achieving, face to face off the back of it. Really, it's testing yourself to see if you can make it happen. It's really hard to explain it, but I think a lot of it comes down to enthusiasm and enjoyment of it, because if you enjoy something, that comes across in your conversations.
That is so true. Now, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's something quite unique about Julianne in her approach to prospecting and cold calling, or even prospecting via LinkedIn. I'm interested to get her opinion on this, whether she doesn't feel failure or whether she just goes for it anyway, because when she cold calls, she always picks companies that are very well known. She doesn't just pick small little businesses. She always goes for the big businesses. And when she calls that big business, she always goes for the most senior people she can find.
Oh,
and
good.
so many salespeople are intimidated by big businesses, and they're intimidated by fancy senior job titles. But Julianne isn't. She will, when we have our session at the end of the week, and I'll say, who have you spoken to this week? And she just lists famous companies, massive organizations, and she'll go, I spoke to that director, and that's quite unique with Julianne, that she's never intimidated by people. So Julianne, why is that unique about you?
And it comes back to the sport again. Have you ever stood on a start line ready to race, maybe in the rain, the cold, the wet, and you're going to be running, and you're going to be running fast? Then you're never going to be intimidated by a cold call or the response of somebody on that call, because you've wound yourself up to such extent in a race scenario that I really genuinely believe nothing else is going to phase you, because you're used to that heart ticking, and you're psyching yourself up, and so it's not scary to ring somebody, and it's not scary to choose the big company and the chief exec. Just for me, I just have that attitude of going for it.
Yeah, and also linked to that as well, you're not really phased if you do get rejection. You're just like, oh yeah, so what, next? And again, for a lot of salespeople, that can completely derail their whole calling session, or even their whole day, or even week sometimes. But with yourself, it's, they said no, so what, next? And that again that's why it's such a pleasure to coach with you, because of these things that you just, I mean, the only thing that does frustrate you is if you get too much of the admin and stuff that prevents you from doing the proactive prospecting activities. That's what frustrates you, because you just want to get out there and start hitting the phones or having those Teams meetings and such like. So but that's interesting you say.
I think it's about harnessing the negative, experience, harnessing it, somehow turning it around and getting back on with it and doing it again, utilizing that energy to move forward.
Yeah. Excluding the sales coaching that we've been doing over the last sort of 7 months or so, how many years throughout your life have you been coached from a sports perspective, would you say?
Not many actually, Simon. So only the last sort of 5 or so years now, in terms of the sports side. But I suppose you look back at your sort of your childhood, and you've had coaching in other perspectives. Like I've had a lot of music background training, and I think that comes into it as well. That following a plan all the time, and committing and being determined to follow a particular path.
Yeah, because you are very coachable. there are a lot of people, and I'm sure Christine's got some stories here as well, of clients that aren't very coachable, and you're having to push them all the time. Whereas yourself, when we have our coaching sessions, you're writing notes, you're putting it in your plan. When we have our second session of the week, you're reading back what your action points were to me, and it's you just take everything and you embrace everything we discuss, and then you immediately put it into action. You don't just think of it from an academic point of view and think, oh, that's interesting. You actually take it and you run with it. Which again, Christine, you must have had clients over the years who aren't like Julianne, who aren't that coachable, and it's a lot harder work.
I would say out of all of the people that I have coached over the last 15 years, maybe 1 in 100 were coachable. I'm dead serious. I mean, people pay me to coach them, and then they fight me every step of the way.
Yeah. And do you, Christine, do you get people quit, give up after a few sessions? They go, oh, this isn't for me. This isn't working, and they've only done 2 or 3, 4 sessions because the focus is on them, and they just don't have it. They just aren't prepared to leave their comfort zone. They've become too comfortable in that comfort zone for various reasons, and they just won't leave it.
Well, and the other part too, Julianne, is one of the things that I experience is once salespeople hit a certain level of success, they quit learning. They think they know it all. They can't possibly learn anymore. And I have never ever stopped learning, and I think that's why Simon and I hit it off so well as colleagues, coach colleagues, is because Simon reads just as much as I read. He's always studying like I'm always studying. Yeah, my bookcase too. And I think that's part of the key. It's just like you being an athlete. Okay, after you have competed, there's always the next competition, right?
Mm-hmm,
and you just don't quit practicing until your next competition.
Right.
So practice and learning and studying is a way of life for you as well. So I want to get back to cold calling because I'm really interested in this part of it, Julianne. 2 questions. One is, when you designate your time you're going to cold call, how many calls do you make during that zone time that you've set aside?
Gosh, that's a hard question because it varies depending on what people say to me on the call. So for example, yesterday I set out with a half an hour zone that I had allocated to cold calls, and I only managed 1 because the HR manager that I was talking to spent the entire time with a really productive conversation, talking with me, and I've moved forward with that. So I guess it could be approximately about 20 different companies in an hour of positive conversations. It really depends on the time of day. That can really impact, and also the actual companies that I'm approaching, because some of them are more technical conversation than the others, but they're all recorded. So Simon's taught me about recording all these conversations very in details, so that I know exactly who I've spoken to, and recording the numbers of calls I'm making and the quality of the calls afterwards. And that's really been something for me, so I can look back and show what I've actually done in that hour.
One of the things I teach my clients is to keep a success journal, because so many times they'll say, well, I tried cold calling and it didn't work. Now, they may have made 20 or 30 calls and talked to 1 person, and that's it. In the USA, just about 80% of the calls go to voicemail. So I have to teach them to have a very concise, short voice message to leave them, but you always have a follow-up cadence so you can get back, and just don't expect them to call you back. You have to be the one to do the follow-up work. But in those cold calls that you make, how do you get around the gatekeeper, or do you already know the right person to talk to before you make that cold call?
I've got a good idea who I need to speak to, because I realise you do have to have a name at the back of your head, and normally from LinkedIn, for example, where you get hold of that name. And at the moment, with COVID, you do need to get through that gatekeeper. It's so difficult to get through on the telephone numbers at the moment. So I've got the name, I ring, and it's all about being personable to that gatekeeper, that receptionist. That rapport, that genuine rapport with that first person that you're speaking to, and also a sense of confidence. And that comes back to that body language, going in quite assertively on that conversation with the gatekeeper. So they will open the door and let you through to the contact you're after.
Good tips, good tips. Simon, do you have any, we're almost out of time. Simon, do you have any last questions?
I think for me, it's the way that Julianne is always looking to make those improvements. So I often tell a story with all my new clients around Dave Brailsford, who was the coach for the British UK cycling team, and the way he looked at these marginal gains, look at these 1% improvements on different parts of the teams, from their tires to their nutrition, etc., etc. And you can see that in the way that Julianne works, in terms of, we might be talking about cold calling or gatekeepers, and we'll talk about just some slight tweaks, and then Julianne will take that little tweak and then roll it out on the very next call. And just these little 1% improvements each time have that compound interest that over a period of a few weeks, a few months, it makes such a big difference. And that's a real skill of Julianne's, is to take these little things but put them into action. She's a real fantastic at taking these ideas and techniques, but putting them into action. And that's the difference. And I think that is, the athlete there is just taking it and making it work and just doing it. Julianne never makes excuses. She just does it.
Just off the back of that, I was just thinking of a really good example. So just a tweak in terms of the language used. You know, Simon gives me a couple of words I could use instead of words that I would normally use, and that's the difference between success and not success really at the moment. Just a small word change can end up with a really positive contact.
Yeah, because we do talk about some very specific words to use on the phone, in meetings, on emails, words that are very powerful in sales. And we'll talk about it in one session, and by the next session, Julianne's shown me examples of where that has made a massive difference, where it's almost tipped the balance between having a good conversation and having an outstanding conversation. So it's just a little one words here and there. There's about half a dozen words we've kind of introduced so far that really can help persuade. So yeah, good.
Julie, can you think of a word that Simon has helped you with that you can share? Okay.
Yeah, willing. Before.
Willing.
Yeah, willing. I know it's just an everyday word, but I seriously have changed all my emails and correspondence to use that word wherever I can. Before, I would have used, would you like to? Now I use, would you be willing to? And that is such a small change, but it really has been a success in terms of the contacts that and conversations that I've moved forward with, for sure. And that's, yeah, Simon, I don't know whether you want to explain a bit more about that particular word.
Well, willing, the Loughborough University in the UK did some research on, they analysed lots of different sales calls and negotiations, and they looked at all the words that the successful outcomes results came from. and willing was one of the most powerful words you could use. So if you say to somebody, would you be willing to do something, it's certainly, I don't know, it might be different in the US because of the way you use the English language, but in the UK, willing is really powerful. So yeah, if you can use willing, would you be willing to introduce me to your boss? Would you be willing to have a meeting with me next week? Would you be willing to review this? Would you? Yeah, that is a really powerful way of doing it. And another word that we use in the UK a lot in terms of in selling is the word let's. Let's grab a coffee. Let's jump on a Zoom meeting. Let's speak next Tuesday and go through it's assertive and professional, but without being over the top, without being too salesy. So yeah, there's two words. They're willing and let's.
And what they do is, because I talk a lot about this in my coaching, is you want to align with the buyer. You're not trying to pull the buyer or push the buyer. You want to align with the buyer, and using willing and let's, that's aligning with them. I love it. I'm going to start using that too. See, I learned from you guys. This old dog can still learn new tricks. Well, I have so enjoyed talking to you, Julie Ann, and I'm not kidding you. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, right, Simon? I mean,
it's a pleasure. It's great that I get paid to talk to Julie Ann twice a week. Right.
I'm jealous. And we'll have to have you back on, Julie Ann. But everyone, watch this video, share this video, give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe. Pass this on to your boss, because Julie Ann is not only a successful athlete, she's a successful sales professional as well. So take her words to heart and try it. Why not? What do you have to lose, right? But remember, sales is a journey, not a quick trip around the block. I'll see you guys with Simon on our next video. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie Ann.